So you just started Warframe and you don't understand how to mod your weapons. Fear no more. What's up, Tenno? iFlynn here. By the end of this video, you'll know everything that there is to know about modding your weapons in Warframe. Go ahead and Magistar slam that like button and let's get right into it. As a new or returning player, modding your weapons in Warframe can become an extremely daunting task as there's over 1000 mods and even arcanes to equip and explore. First of all, we're going to start with the basics. Then we'll talk about how to amplify our damage even further using different mods. We will cover what some of the more powerful mods to acquire are to enable us to take on the Steel Path, what buffs we should consider using, and finally, what arcanes to equip and what they actually do. Starting with the basics, to increase your damage, you need mods such as Serration, Hornet Strike, and Pressure Point. Each of these mods are plus damage mods for primaries, secondaries, and melees. How these work is they take a look at the total amount of damage that your weapon deals, they find their listed percentage off that number, then they add the number that they find on top. So for example, on the AX52, its total damage is 40, as it only deals 40 puncture damage without mods. A max rank Serration will find 165% of 40, which is 66, then add that on top, meaning our AX52 will deal 106 damage after Serration is installed. All elemental mods in the game work in the exact same way. Say for example, we equip Infected Clip onto our AX52 before we equip Serration. It's going to find 90% of 40, which is 36, then add that to your AX52 in the form of toxin damage. To find your total damage when you have different physical and elemental damage types equipped, you simply add together all the different damage types, so in this case, it would be 36 toxin damage plus 40 puncture damage to equal 76 total damage. If we were to equip Serration alongside our Infected Clip mod, you notice that Serration treats our toxin damage the exact same way that it treated our puncture damage. So it would find 165% of 36, which is 59.4, then it adds that 59.4 with 36, leaving us with 95.4 toxin damage. So we add our puncture damage and our toxin damage together now, we would end up with 201.4 total damage. This total damage value is the amount of damage that you would deal to an enemy if they had no weaknesses or no resistances. If, for example, we were to shoot an enemy that was 50% resistant to puncture damage, the amount of damage that our weapon outputs to said enemy in the form of puncture would be reduced by 50%, leaving us with 53 outgoing puncture damage, but still 95.4 outgoing toxin damage, which means we would be dealing at 148.4 damage to that enemy instead of 201.4. The inverse is also true. So let's say we shoot at an enemy who is 50% weak to toxin damage, the game would then find 50% of the toxin damage that we deal and add it to our damage output when our bullets hit the enemy. The different damage types in this game matter a lot. We basically never mod for physical damage types, so those are mods that give you plus slash, plus impact, and plus puncture. These damage types are often not used because the status effects and bonus damage that elemental damage types are capable of giving you are 9 times out of 10 way more beneficial for our damage output than the physical damage types. The big 3 elemental combination damage types that we use are corrosive, created by using electric and toxin. This is oftentimes good versus enemies with yellow health bars, that's armor. Corrosive status effects reduce enemies' armor. Viral, which is created by combining cold and toxin. This increases the amount of damage that you deal to an enemy's health by 350%. And finally, magnetic, created by combining electric and cold or by using a standalone magnetic mod. This is often used versus enemies with any type of shields. It's viral, but for shields. After you've created an elemental combination, it's beneficial to also run a standalone element to complement said elemental combo. For example, if you're running corrosive damage, adding heat as a complementary element makes a lot of sense as it helps reduce enemies' armor even further. The same can be said if you're using viral damage. You can use heat for its damage over time effect, but you could also sub it out for electric damage depending on the weapon that you're using and the enemies that you're facing. When it comes to magnetic damage, if you're using 2 mods to make the magnetic combo, you could slot in toxin to help bypass enemy shields. However, if you're using a standalone magnetic mod, you could run corrosive heat or viral heat / electric to boost your damage even more. And that's basically all you need to know about elements in Warframe. And now that we know all of that, how can we take our damage a step further? A lot of weapons in Warframe fall into one of 3 categories: crit weapons, status weapons, and hybrid weapons. The rule of thumb is that if you have a high enough critical chance, say 22%, throw crit chance mods and crit damage mods onto your weapons. If you have a status chance at or above 22%, it's worth using status chance mods to aid in total damage output. Make sure to try and only use the status chance mods that also give you an elemental damage bonus alongside the additional status chance such as thermite rounds and rhyme rounds. If a weapon leans very heavily into a particular stat, say for example the Soma Prime, it has an extremely low status chance at 10%, but a higher than average critical chance at 30% with a 3 times crit damage multiplier. In this case, we would lean heavily into crit completely, eliminating the idea of using status chance mods, as just going for as much damage as possible through crit mods and high damage percent elemental mods would be more beneficial. On the other end of that spectrum would be the Phantasma Prime. This is a weapon that has a status chance of 22%, but a critical chance of only 11%. So we wouldn't bother equipping critical chance or critical damage mods, just status chance and status damage mods. After you consider all of that, there's a stat called Multishot, and this bonus makes your weapon shoot more bullets per trigger pull, just giving you more overall damage. This stat is in literally every single build, bar builds that just don't allow you to use it. The thing is, mods that give you Multishot are rare. They'll come from very specific activities or enemies that you just have to go out of your way to farm. An easy way to get Multishot mods though is by skipping collecting the normal versions of them and going straight for the galvanized versions. Galvanized mods are mods that you purchase from the Arbitration's Honors vendor located in the Arbiters of Hexus room in any relay. You'll have to take part in a game mode called Arbitrations that you unlock after beating the Eris Junction located on Pluto. Arbitrations are touted as difficult, but as long as you know how to stay alive and you apply all of the weapon modding tips that we've covered thus far in this video, you'll do just fine. While playing Arby's, you're going to get rewarded with Vitus Essence. This is a currency that you're going to spend at the Arbitration's Honors vendor to buy the Galvanized mods. I want you guys to pick up Galvanized Fusion, Chamber, and Hell first. These are the free multi-shot mods for pistols, rifles, and shotguns. All of the other Galvanized mods are worth picking up too. So let's say, for example, Aptitude, Savvy, and Shot. These mods increase the amount of damage that you deal per status effect on the enemy. Once you've got yourself Galvanized mods, you understand elements, and you know when to mod for status, crit, or both, you're straight up ready for Steel Path. This is, of course, implying you've upgraded the mods, but getting the endo to do so is a topic for another video that I've already posted. When you play Steel Path, you'll come across these enemies called Acolytes. They kinda look like the Stalker. Upon killing them, they're going to drop weapon arcanes that can be equipped to your primary weapons and secondary weapons. You'll also need to have a primary or secondary arcane adapter to install these arcanes, and you can purchase these arcane adapters from Teshin at any relay for Steel Essence. This is a currency that is dropped from these Acolyte enemies that we talked about. The free primary and secondary arcanes that we need to worry about are as follows: Merciless, Deadhead, and Dexterity. Merciless gives you bonus damage on enemy kill with a bonus 30% extra reload speed at max rank. Deadhead gives you bonus damage on headshot kill with a 30% headshot multiplier at max rank. Then Dexterity gives you bonus damage as you get melee kills with a bonus 7.5 seconds combo duration at max rank. Which you equip obviously depends on the weapon that you're using and your playstyle. If you mainly use melee weapons, Dexterity is the play. If you like high damage headshot kills, Deadhead is the play. If you just want to slap something on for more damage, then you rock with Merciless. And that actually segues us nicely into melee weapon modding. So you know how I just spent an entire video explaining to you all the different choices that you can make when it comes to doing more damage with your weapons in Warframe? Yeah, well, all of that gets thrown out the window when it comes to melee weapon modding. Every melee weapon build in the game looks like this, and it's because of the melee influence arcane that you get from the Sanctum Anatomica. You could throw this build on 90% of the melee weapons in Warframe, and it would kill every enemy in the room, implying you don't have an elemental damage type that's gonna accidentally combine with the electric damage and brick the functionality of melee influence. No electric damage means no influence, and no influence means no melee weapon nuking. Generally speaking, melee weapons are far less flexible when it comes to modding because of how powerful some of the mods are and because of how some of the melee weapons work. For example, other than Ribbons, there isn't a range mod for melee weapons that gives you more range than Primed Reach. There isn't a critical chance mod that gives you more critical chance chance than Blood Rush. There isn't a status chance mod that gives you more status chance than Weeping Wounds. And if that wasn't bad enough, if we take a look at glaives, for example, you have to build them in a certain way as well to make the most out of their heavy attack explosions. Otherwise, you're just using a melee influence build again. The only other option that you really have is slam builds, which again have to be built in a very specific way. So melee modding is a little bit boring. Moving on from that, what else can we do to increase our damage output? The next step is to invest into damage buffing abilities like Roar or Nourish. Honestly, I want you guys to pick the one that appeals to you the most. Nourish is going to give you added viral damage and double your energy income, where Roar is going to give you a damage boost that is going to interact with your damage over time effects in an interesting way, giving them more damage output than you would expect. A bunch of different Warframes in the game all have different types of damage buffing abilities. So let's say, for example, Volt, he has his Shock Trooper augment that adds electric damage to your weapons, and Saren has her Venom Dose augment that adds corrosive damage to your weapons. The one thing that all of these damage buffing abilities have in common is that the more ability strength and more ability duration you have equipped, the better. And to be honest, that's everything that you need to know about the current meta for dealing damage in Warframe. Thanks for watching the video, and make sure to check out another one to help out the channel.